I'm your host, Larry Dasilva. Thanks for joining us. Well, you know, when I think of Motown Soul, I think of folks like Berry Gordy, the Supremes, Smokey Robinson. When I think of Blue-Eyed Soul, of course, I think of John Hall and Daryl Oates from back in the day. It's still going strong today. Well, there's another sound of a certain type of soul. It was called Champagne Soul, and our guest today has certainly lived up to champagne and all that comes with the bubbles. Our guest, author, singer, photographer, Lamont McLemore, has written a book called From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension, a life fulfilled in baseball, photography, and music. He's co-written it with Robert-Allan Arno, and we are very, very pleased to welcome to Studio 411 Lamont McLemore. Mac, how are you today?
Hey, sir, like I said, if I make it on this side of the dirt, I'm all right, man.
There you go. There you go. I love it. I love it. Tell me now, after all these years, and again, we're talking spanning 6 Grammys, 14 gold records, 3 platinum records. We'll talk some more about that. But after all the success you've had, not only in music and also your career in photography that we'll talk about a little later, what was the motivation to write the book?
Poverty.
Oh.
So, you know, the book is called From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension. It could have been entitled, If I Could Do It, Anybody Can, because we came from total poverty, man, with outdoor toilet, number 2 tub hanging on the back porch and all. And there's just no hope in life, man. I mean, just no hope. And so it all stemmed from that. And my grandmother, who was a Cherokee Indian, who always got behind us and said, never give up and all. And I said, well, you know, Grandma, I really love to travel. See, I had all these travel magazines with Egypt and Paris and Rome. And I said, I wish I could go to these places, but I knew I'd never be able to. She said, you know what? Stand up. I stood up. She said, now take a step. I said, okay, now what? She said, now you one step closer. So I've never stopped stepping.
There you go. That statement reminds me of the famous movie "It's a Wonderful Life" with Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy was the character he played in that movie, where he too was someone that had a desire to see the world and travel. And in some ways he did, in some ways he didn't. But believe me, in the end, he was certainly a better, more well-rounded person as a result. And certainly, I think from one side of the lens to the other, the camera lens, that is, you certainly have traveled the world in style, no doubt.
Yeah, well, ironically, well, you heard around the world in 80 days, but I guess I made around the world 80 years, but I still made it. And this last cruise, I went to Abu Dhabi and Jerusalem and Rome and Jordan, places that only places I hadn't been on one cruise ship, went to all of those places. So, and Jerusalem, man, is, oh gosh, if you haven't never been there, that's one place you really have to go, man. I touched the manger where Jesus was born and the rock that they put in front of his grave and walked down the path, with, you know, from his crucifixion. So, man, your hair just stands up on your head and all, and the memories, man, I'm truly, truly blessed.
Now, you dedicated the book to some very important women in your life. I think you mentioned one earlier. Tell us about that.
All the women in my grandmother and mother and sisters, and, well, every woman that I used to photograph and all. I mean, women make the world go round, so I've been blessed again there. And my mother, who, talking about being truly blessed, she just turned 103 and got all the faculties, man. So I don't know anybody as lucky and as blessed as I am.
That means you'll be around to interview for a long time, my friend, if you've got those kind of genes in your family.
Yeah, I hope it not just Levi's, but I'll go from there.
There you go. Now, you talked that your grandmother should have been a fortune teller. Why was that?
Well, she always had confidence in me, you know, and talking about what I would. She thought, one of these days you're going to really be popular and rich and all that. I said, this lady crazy. To take care of your whole family. And I can't believe it, but all of that came true. to this day, that's what I'm still doing, taking care of my family.
Now, the book From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension, we're speaking with Lamont McLemore joining us here on Studio 411. Tell me, the Hobo Flats, that's really more of a kind of a state of mind. It's not necessarily an actual city, correct?
No, it's not a city. From Hobo Flats. Hobo Flats is what they used to call everywhere I used to live. You know, all the guys, we always partying, and everybody used to come by, including Earth, Wind and Fire, the Temptations, and all of them. You know, we didn't have no money, so they called it Hobo Flats, but we had so much fun and inspiration from each other. And do you know that each and every one of them is successful?
Now, you grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, tell me, in those days, if memory serves, again, a little before my time, but knowing my history, especially baseball, as a young boy, in those days, you still had the Cardinals and Stan the Man Musial, and you also, for a brief time, had the St. Louis Browns, although they weren't necessarily the best team in the city.
No, but they played baseball. They were my team anyways, and I had so much fun just being there, and couldn't afford to go to the ballpark, but they had I forgot what they call it, peep through a peephole to watch the game. What do you call that?
Oh, no. So, in other words, you would be out in the fencing area, and you could look in to see some of the game.
Right, not whole game. That's what they used to call it. And
oh,
then,
that's right. That's right.
Only way to get out of the poverty, it was in entertainment or sports or something like that. You can only work as a waiter at the post office at the best. So I wanted to play ball. My hope for getting out of there. And one time they had a tryout at the St. Louis Cardinals. I said, well, hey, I told two of my friends I played ball with, let's go try out. They said, are you crazy? It's prejudice. They don't mean us. I said, they didn't say not us. So let's go. So we took the little speaker out, went out to the ballpark, and we showed up. The guy said, yes, can I help you? I said, we're here to try out. You can see on his face, like, why? But he looked at the manager, and the manager said, well, they're here. Let them go out and try out anyway, you know. So we went out, and, man, we did better than ever. Well, we knew we had to hit harder, run faster, you know, eat more dirt, and we did. And when I got home, my mother said, well, how did you do? I said, oh, man, we did great. She said, well, what's going to happen now? I said, they're going to call us. He said, how they going to call you? You ain't got no phone. We were so excited. I said, oh, shoot, they were just driving.
You forgot that one small detail. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Now, in those days, who were some of the athletes that you admired? Of course, you were just a young boy around the time that Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. But, I mean, who were athletes, even in any sports, that, in other words, you idolized as a young boy?
Oh, yeah, well, Babe Ruth and Marty Marion, Stan Musial. I mean, all of them, man, but there were some names you wouldn't even recognize.
Oh, I bet you about, let's see, it might have been before your time, Ducky Medwick and Frankie Frisch, although by then he was probably a manager at that point, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember all of them too, man.
And you got, was it Vern Stevens later on with the Browns, and, you know, amazing. They even won a championship during the war years, which was like pulling a rabbit out of a hat, I got to tell you. Now, you were, as we said, born in St. Louis. Now, at 9, obviously very ambitious, and in those days it was still something a young boy or even a young girl could do. You started selling newspapers at age 9 to help your mom and your siblings. By that point, your mom was a single mom, correct?
I wasn't that. I was about 6 or 7.
Oh, 6 or 7.
I could only carry 2 newspapers, and they were taller than me. But I was so happy to get that little 25 cents or whatever, man. So it made my day, and it gave me a job, you know. So, oh well.
And now, when you were a boy at that age, what did you want to be? Was it primarily a ball player, or was there any other thoughts at, you know, between 7 and 10 years of age that you said, well, you know, I think I may want to try this too? Well,
baseball was first. I mean, any time I could play ball, a story about that too. But and then photography. My mother always carried a camera with her. Whenever we saw her, oh, here comes Mama June with a camera. But when I was playing cowboy and Indians, I had a 2-gun holster and a gun in one and a camera in the other. So I guess I always wanted to be, well, a photographer or not a singer. The singing was the last thing I ever wanted to be, man. So, photographer and a baseball player.
Now,
One time when I finally saved up enough money to buy this Marty Marion shortstop baseball glove, I was so proud, man, because I sold railroad tracks or anything to get this money.
Gotcha.
And when I got the glove, I woke up the next day and I went knocking on all my friends' doors, said, "Let's go play ball." They said, "It's a monsoon out there. What are you talking about?" I didn't even care if it was raining or not. I just wanted to play ball.
I know that rain wouldn't have done good for that leather, and I'm sure that was real leather in those days.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, not like today's stuff. Today's all artificial, man-made stuff. Believe me. Now your grandmother said to you one time when you were bored, asked you to pick 3 things, and tell us what those 3 things were that you decided. I think you've mentioned them already, but.
Well, when I came in from the rain, and my grandmother saw me and said, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" I said, "But he won't play ball with me." She said, "There's a monsoon out there." So I said, and I'm so bored. She said, "You know what? If you pick 3 things in life that you want to do, you'll never be bored again." I said, "What?" She said, and I know the first one is baseball, and then what's the second one? I said, "Well,
photography and singing." I guess even then you were inclined to be a singer.
No, photography and baseball. And she said, "Well, what's the third thing?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "Well, you think about it and tell me later." So one day, just out of nowhere, she said, "Boy, what's that third thing?" I said, "Singing." Oh, man.
There you go.
I through my teeth because the guys on the corner were out there singing. They said, "Lamont, come on and sing with us." I said, "Man, I don't want to sing." He said, "Well, all you got to do is sing bass. You can do bop, bop, bop." And the girls were all standing around. "Go ahead, Lamont." And it sounded pretty good. So I said, "Well, maybe, So when I got home, that's why I told my grandmother singing would be number 3.
There you go. Lamont McLemore joining us here for the hour on Studio 411. The book From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension, a life fulfilled in baseball, photography, and music. Lamont, I've got a little surprise for you. We actually tracked down someone that goes back to the old Soul City record days. Someone that worked closely with one of your producers, Bones Howe, back in the day. Named Barbara Mitchell. Barbara, you there with us?
I'm here.
All righty. Now tell me, back in those days, not just Soul City Records, correct me if I'm wrong, that was Johnny Rivers, a young man back in the day who had quite a few hits himself, started that label. What do you remember about working alongside the producers and some of the folks on the Fifth Dimension?
Well, actually, Mark Horton, who was our manager, was really co-producing, and Johnny owned the record company.
There you go. And now, what can you tell me about the young Mr. McLemore? Was he a handful in those days?
He's always been a handful, always bopping.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mac.
A handful of what, but I'll take it.
I'm telling you. Now, Lamont, do you remember working with Bones Howe, correct?
Oh, yes, for sure, man. He was the greatest.
And you worked with a lot of people, I understand. Elvis, and I think, oh my God, too many to name. But yeah, you guys were fortunate to have him. Now, do you remember Ms. Mitchell working with him as an assistant?
No, I really don't. Well, Alzheimer's sitting in at this age anyways, but no, I don't.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll let you in on a little secret here. This isn't Barbara Mitchell. This is your old buddy Florence LaRue joining us. Hi, Florence.
Hi there.
Oh, no. Oh, the queen is alive and well. That's great.
You still bop, huh?
I thought he'd figure out, boy, that voice sounds familiar, but I guess she must have disguised it a little bit. Tell me, it's...
You know what? It was way in the background. I couldn't hear very well, so that's... Well, I'm glad. Oh man, she's the greatest.
Oh yeah, Florence, of course, still touring with the. We'll call them the new Fifth Dimension because again, they've got some big shoes to fill. But as long as she's heading the outfit out, I'm telling you, they've got a fighting chance. So, tell me, Florence. Share some memories of those early years working with Billy and with Marilyn and Lamont. I mean, you guys had some great times.
Well, if they're including Lamont, they're censors.
Say again?
if they include Lamont, they're censored.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I heard Lamont can tell a few tales, some tales we can't air on this station.
Lamont was always there with a joke and a smile, and always, cheering people up. And I was fussing at folks. He was up there. Oh, that's okay. He was up there, soothing them.
There you go.
right. Well, I have a joke book out too, Coach.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I saw something in there that was your next project. You wanted to write a book about that. Now, tell me, when Lamont, when you were with in the early '60s, before things finally clicked, you were with a kind of a jazz outfit. Almost reminded me of kind of an early Manhattan Transfer type sound called the Fives rather, and later they became the Vocals. At what point did Florence join the mix? Was that only with the Fifth Dimension, or did you know her before that?
Well, I knew Florence. She was modeling for us, and we were close friends then. And we had a group called the High Fives, and we were getting ready to change it. And one of the High Fives couldn't continue, so we found Florence, man, and asked her to join the group from a beauty pageant. And so she won the talent part, man, and she was fine too. So we got together, and the rest is history.
Oh yeah, and that was Florence. That was what, around 1965 when you finally connected with these folks.
And I told him I don't want to join a singing group. I'm not a singer, and I'm in college and working full time. But he was such a smooth talker. Here I am still.
Now, I was going to ask this of Mac later in the show, but in the couple of minutes we have with Florence joining us here. And, of course, believe me, as I said to Florence, we will definitely be having her on for her own segment in the near future because, again, she's got some great stories and memories to talk as well. Florence, we'll start with you. Best song that you ever recorded?
Oh, my goodness. We've been blessed to have recorded so many wonderful songs. But my favorite is a song that was never released as a single. And it's a song called Misty Roses. And Billy did a beautiful job on the lead on that song.
Now, is that still somewhere in the archives, or no one knows whatever happened to that?
No, it's on the album. Jimmy Webb wrote that.
Which is my Fifth Dimension album.
But I'm saying the recording of it, is it somewhere, have it in the archives, or is it kind of disappeared?
No, it's on the album, The Magic Garden.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Here's a tough one for you, because just to tell our viewers, the Fifth Dimension, in about 11 years span, from roughly 66 through about 1976, 77, had 30 top 40 hits and a total of 40 Hot 100 singles. So again, and matter of fact, we're looking at one of the many compilation CDs called The Essential Fifth Dimension, which I believe is Sony Legacy. So again, you guys just, you can't name all the songs that you guys did. But Lamont, what about you? Best song you guys ever recorded, in your opinion?
I always tell everybody Aquarius because it sold the most.
There you go.
Like Florence said, I like a whole lot of the songs that we did, and it's kind of hard to pick one,
And then I'm going to end with this before we let Florence go. I saw you guys, and I had to think hard about this. I saw you on American Bandstand. Correct me if I'm imagining this. You guys came on and did Love Hangover, and I said, oh, this is another hit for the Fifth Dimension. And then next thing you know, Diana Ross winds up with the hit, and your record, I thought, was the better version, Florence.
Oh, well, thank you. What happened was our manager, Mark Gordon, heard Love Hangover, and he said, look, there's a song on Diana Ross's album that she's not releasing as a single. I think we should do it. So we recorded it and put it out. I believe Diana was, I think, in Germany or somewhere, and she called Motown and they put hers out, and of course, with her name, it's Squash Stars.
Wow, amazing. But again, it is anyone who has a chance, and with media, social media, and downloading that goes on today, believe me, if if anyone hears that, I think they'll agree with me that it's just as good, if not a superior version. Well, you two, I tell you, Lamont, did I pull the wool over your eyes or no?
Oh, yes, you did. Ironically, I was just thinking about Florence yesterday. My wife and I was thinking, we heard from Florence. I said, no, yeah, I think they're on the road again. And they are so good, man. I mean, for anybody out there, please go see the Fifth Dimension now, because I had to retire because I have major back surgery. But the guy that got the replacement is so good, they probably wouldn't want me back anyway. But Florence is taking over the group, and they don't rest on their laurels, man. She makes them still take lessons and all. They're still getting standing ovations and selling out places. So please go and see them.
There you go. Florence, again, my thanks on short notice for surprising your old comrade, Florence LaRue.
My pleasure. I finally called him back in the country because he's usually all over the world traveling.
I know. I've been working on getting him for almost 2 years. He's always on a cruise ship or somewhere else. I'm telling you. He'll tell you when you talk to him. He just came back from Jerusalem, and my goodness, too many places to name. But FlorenceLaRue.com is the website, correct?
Right.
All right.
Or the fifthdimension.org.
Very good. Very good. And we thank you again. Continued good success, health, and again, we look forward to having you on the program soon. So thanks for sharing a few moments with Lamont.
All right.
Okay, Lamont.
Taking the time. Okay, cool.
All righty. That's Florence LaRue here joining us on Studio 411. We are still here with the fabulous Lamont McLemore, the book From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension, A Life Fulfilled in Baseball, Photography, and Music, co-written with Robert, I'll get it out of my mouth, Robert-Allan Arno. And just a terrific read. And again, we can only begin to scratch the surface with the lengthy, successful career. Getting back to we'll go back to the early 50s. Now, you wound up getting drafted in the Navy, correct?
Right.
And so that was, where were you stationed, or you wound up doing some photography in the Navy, if I recall?
Yeah, well, I got in some trouble in St. Louis and Chicago, and the police gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. But you don't seem like no gangster, so why don't you, if you want to go to jail with the rest of these guys, or you want to go in the Navy or the service? I said, well, I always wanted to travel, so I take the Navy. So that's how I chose the Navy.
See, now I know where you got that travel bug, because obviously you were exposed to it in the military for sure.
Right. Well, the Navy actually saved my life, even though it was very hard and what I had to go through and all, because it was still very prejudiced then. And when I went in the Navy, they said, what do you want to be? I said, photographer. And the whole room laughed, because all we could be was stewards, serving officers and stuff like that. So I didn't know that. But anyway, I worked my way through it and finally got into photography in the Navy. So it sure wasn't easy, but I made it. And then when I was getting ready to get discharged, they said, well, hey, we'll send you to photography school. And if you sign up for another 4 years, well, I stuck up the middle fingers.
Now, during that time, you had an opportunity come your way, and correct me if I'm wrong. Was it when the Dodgers were still in Brooklyn, or was it the L.A. Dodgers that came looking for you?
No, L.A. Dodgers.
Oh, it was L.A. Dodgers. Okay, and
I was in the special services playing baseball for the Navy, and we played a game against the Dodgers, and they liked me, so they offered me a contract in the Double-A league, and I went out and broke my arm the night I supposed to get in. The night I got my contract, I went out and broke my arm riding an old raggedy '59 Chrysler or something. The door came open, and I fell out on the ground and just broke my arm. And people say, get him out of the street. The cars will run over him. I said, I don't let the cars run over me. I mean, that just could not happen, you know, so, and on my arm. But I still went and tried to play, but my arm wasn't strong enough then for major league pitching, so I switched to first base. And it just wasn't the same. So, and the Fifth Dimension when I started, so I think I went that route. I think I made the right decision.
Oh, sure. And if it makes you feel any better, I know there's a couple. Right now, only one comes to mind, the late, great Clarence Clemens, who I'm sure you know was the saxophonist with Bruce Springsteen. He was actually drafted in the mid-'60s out of college to go play with the Cleveland Browns, and the day before the camp was to start, he was involved in a crazy car accident, and then suffered an injury that just took him out of football. So, but look at where his career wound up.
Right, and God has a plan for you, so whatever, just accept it.
Absolutely. Now, in the late
always look for the best.
In the late 50s, early 60s, you and a buddy co-founded a magazine called Elegant, which was a lifestyle magazine that was intended for black men and women. Tell me, you did that on a shoestring budget, if I recall.
A very shoestring budget. Ironic that we sent a couple of our models who were very beautiful girls, and they had auditioned for Bazaar, and they went and they said, well, we'll call you. And I said, well, I've heard that before, So I said, my grandmother always said, well, if there isn't a media, create one. I said, well, you know what? I think I'll do that, but I need somebody to edit, an editor and all. And so one of the models said, I know a guy who wants to start a magazine, so she introduced us, and he got all the writers and all, and I did all the photography, and I knew everybody anyway, the entertainment industry. And I just started shooting these pictures, put the book together, and then all of them just plain paper. And we folded it up like a magazine and said, okay, oh, it's beautiful. Now what are we going to do? Because I've got to get it published, and we don't have no money. So I said, you know what? I have an idea. So we took the phone book, and I run my fingers down publishing, and stopped at Medallion Printers. I said, okay, we'll try this one first. So we took two of the beautiful models and went out to Medallion Printers in East L.A. and told them we wanted to start this magazine, showed them the dummy that we had. He said, oh, this is great. Yeah, we can do this. And so he said, how much money do you have? I said, well, we don't have no money. You should have seen his face. I wish I had a camera saying, no money. I said, well, how you all expect to get a magazine started? I said, well, sir, we're willing to give up 49% of the book. And the man said, well, we don't do nothing like that. And ironically, his son passed by and saw these two beautiful girls, and then so he came in and said hello. And his father said, well, I want to talk to you. So he went outside and told him, they don't have no money and all. He said, well, man, it's only one black magazine, really, that's Ebony, and he's going to give you 49%. It's at least worth a try. And so that's how we got the book off the ground.
Wow, amazing. Now, in those early editions, you, at that point, for the reasons that you say, because there really weren't a lot of publications that were geared towards African-American folks in those days.
And nothing for men and women together. There's still nothing for men and women together.
I got thrown off for a second. Forgive me. We're looking here at the LP, The Age of Aquarius, The Fifth Dimension, with LaMonte McLemore and, of course, Billy Davis and Marilyn McCoo and your buddy Sweets on the right corner there, and, of course, the aforementioned Florence LaRue. Again, a great LP. Lamont McLemore joining us here for the hour on Studio 411. The book From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension, co-written with Robert-Allan Arno. Some of the folks you wound up photographing for the magazine was Sammy Davis, Nancy Wilson, Johnny Mathis. My goodness, you were riding some fast company even in those early days.
Oh, yeah, man, fortunately. And they were all trying to help a black magazine get off the ground, and the magazine turned out to be very successful. And we said we wanted it to not only be for men and women, but we wanted it to go travel all over the world, or at least all over the states, because black people never had a real big chance to travel, so we wanted them to see some travel law, So we said, well, first, we ain't got no money to travel, so where are we going to go? Well, first we're going to Hollywood, which we lived in L.A., but all across the nation, Hollywood was big. They didn't know we lived here. So the next one was Las Vegas. So we all packed up in a van, and this is quite a story here, and a movie. But we, the guys and the girls all got in, took their own cars and all, and we got boutiques to give us clothes, and so we put them all in the back of a van, and going to Vegas, singing and partying, and all of a sudden the van broke down. Oh no! What are we going to do now? So some guy fortunately pulled over in a truck and said he was a mechanic. He said, "Man, this van ain't going nowhere. It's the bluest engine and everything." So, oh man, what are we going to do with all these clothes and stuff? He said, "Well, I'm going to Vegas too, but I only got a pickup truck." So if you don't mind, but it's going to blow off. So maybe the clothes will blow out. So me and the editor laid on top of the clothes and rode all the way to Vegas. And we shot the pictures. Elegant goes to Las Vegas, and it turned out to be successful.
There you go.
We never had a date when the next book was going to come out because we didn't know when it was going to come out.
There you go.
It's quite a movie, man. So.
Well, there you go. You got to get cracking on that screenwriting credit right there. Get Robert in on that too. He'll help you out for sure.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's great at that too.
One of the folks we mentioned that was in some of the early editions, Johnny Mathis, of course, still busy out there touring and bringing joy to millions, wrote a lovely comment in the back of the book here, the book jacket. Quote, when a tall, handsome young man came to my house many years ago to photograph me for Elegant magazine, I had no idea that his other job as a singer would propel him and his fellow members of the Fifth Dimension to world fame. I'm so proud of Lamont and cherish his friendship, unquote, the legendary Johnny Mathis. And I love the quote, short and sweet, from Otis Williams, who is the lone surviving original member of the Temptations. Quote, Lamont is my idol. My goodness, some high praise. I think he's just jealous because you were a photographer and still are. Just to update the folks, you were a staff photographer for Jet magazine for some 5 decades. And I was sad to hear that now Jet is no longer like so many other magazines. Are they still in business, but they're just not producing a hard copy for the newsstands?
You know what? Somebody bought them out, and I think they finally are coming out with new editions. So
in other words, it won't just be online, it'll actually be also available. Yeah, because to me, you know, I'm old school that way. I want something I can carry with me and, you know, put it down and pick it up whenever I want. And I can remember growing up back in the old days in the neighborhood, you know, some of my neighbors, you know, they had either Ebony or certainly Jet. And little did I realize, as I saw some of the covers, I thought to myself, wait a minute, I remember those covers, and little did I know you were the one that took the photographs. Yeah, I shot for them 50 years, and most of the centerfolds were mine, too. You know, I also was the photographer for Motown on the West Coast when they moved from Detroit to L.A. Well, and our manager, who had a crush on Florence and he ended up being a Fifth Dimension manager, asked me if I wanted to be a photographer. I thought, sure. So I shot Stevie Wonder's first album cover on the beach, and the Temptations and the Supremes and Marvin Gaye. I mean, I shot everybody there. So I know everybody. Absolutely. Now, speaking of Motown, and we talked earlier, of course, with Florence about Diana, who, of course, is certainly one of the premier divas in the music history. Right. But I understand that there's a story, if you can share with us, a story about Diana versus Mary Wilson as far as curves go. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, man, when I was taking them, had me take the Supremes around the city of L.A., the day in the life of the Supreme, before anybody even knew about the Supreme. And, man, they're all beautiful girls, but I think Diana, I felt like she had a little crush on me, but this wasn't quite my type. I was looking at Mary more or less, and I told somebody about it. I said, well, man, Diana Ross, she was a little thin. You know, most brothers like a little meat on it. She looked like a golf player with a wig on it. I said, oh, no,
wow.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, no, I had the opportunity to meet Mary about 10, 11 years ago. Wonderful lady, a hell of a performer. And I understand she's a neighbor of yours, correct?
And there's about 5 blocks from me. Well, I think she just sold a house. She wanted to move to Europe. She said the black entertainers get more recognition over there. So.
Oh, you think she's leaving the States, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm going to have to hook up with you because I want to get Mary on this show. So we'll definitely have to talk about that.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, you'd love to talk.
She's marvelous. She was so personable when we saw her, and again, just always loved her and Diana and Florence and the later incarnations of the Supremes. Something I didn't know about. Talk a little bit about your association with the as they called him back in the day, the genius, the legendary Ray Charles, and his influence on you.
well, I was shooting pictures of Ray Charles too, and I told him that we had a singing group. He said, "Oh yeah." And what kind? I said, "Jazz group." He said, "Jazz group he is perked up." He said, "Well, I can get an audition for you. I mean, us for you, so that you can hear the group." He said, "Oh, sure." So he came over to one of the guys' houses, Larry Summers, who was one of the members of the group. And he came in and said, "Well, I've been hearing a lot about you guys, so come on and gas me." So they sit him in the chair, and they always hand him a magazine or something just to hold, I guess, as a prop. And we getting ready to sing, and he had the book upside down, so we almost couldn't sing, and we was about laughing. Then he turned the book around and said, "Oh, wait a minute."
I would put that in that movie you're talking about, because that sounds like a good bit. I mean, tell you.
Hey, right. So, and then he took us on the road with him, man. We were on this airplane we called the Goonie Bird, and the plane crashed one time when we were on it. Oh man, it's quite a story. So everybody should get the book, man, because Robert-Allan Arno did a great job on it and telling the story. You know,
oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was marvelous to hear some of the anecdotes about Ray. Again, just I had no idea that you had known him and whatever. And of course, anyone who doesn't know Ray Charles, believe me, is missing a lot. So no doubt about it.
You're not kidding, man.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about a talent and all. But one time when we were rehearsing, and I went by his house, and his wife said, "I said, where's Ray?" She said, "He's down in the basement rehearsing, playing the piano." So I went down in the basement, and it was all pitch black there. I said, "Ray, what you doing down here playing the piano in the dark?" I said, "Oh, I didn't say that." I knew I didn't say that. He's blind, so he didn't need no light,
Now tell me, it's believe it or not, already been about a dozen years, but I remember when I walked out of the movie theater when I saw the movie Ray with Jamie Foxx. I looked at my wife and I said, "This cat's got the best actor in the bag." I mean, it was remarkable, his portrayal of Ray Charles, I thought, anyway.
Yeah, fabulous. And you know what, man? When after I saw the movie, and me and Ray's playing and sharing, since he was our manager, and we opened for him for a year or so. I could write another movie about the plane that he was on. His plane. We call it the Goonie Bird, the one that crashed with us on it.
Yes.
And so finally, it crashed in Pittsburgh, but fortunately, we were sitting there waiting to take off. And so much snow and sleet, man, we took all the commercial flights off first. And by the time they told us to take off, our wings were all full of ice and stuff. They kind of brushed it off a little bit. So they said, "Well, it's cool, you can take off." And we took off, and the plane started sputtering, man, and boom, fell back and hit the runway, and almost ran off of the runway. So, oh, man, it was awful. We thought we were gone, man.
Wow.
It came about 10 or 30 feet of to really running off the runway. So by just falling flat, it just messed up the hydraulic. So they went to fix it for 3 days, and we were stuck in Pittsburgh. So finally, when the plane was ready, two mechanics were standing outside as the plane was riveting up. They were just charging up the engine. And they said, "Okay, Ray, it's good to take off." And Ray said, no, something ain't right. I said, "What you mean? We checked it." He said, "Let me off." They took Ray got off the plane, went down to the front of the plane, feeling around. They said, "What's this?" And if the front landing pin wasn't in the pin, he heard it hitting against the plane. He said, "Oh man, if he landed at the wrong angle, man, it could have bit down and he crashed." So,
It's amazing.
So after that, every time we get ready to take off, "Hey Ray, everything all right?"
That's right. It's amazing as they say with many people, how they blind people, deaf people to a certain extent, but certainly blind people compensate with their other senses. And I mean, he was amazing. I understood he could play people in chess, and he total. Just remembered every move he made and where every piece was on the board. That's remarkable.
Yeah, we played cards a lot. I said, "Well, Ray is not right. You got these cards marked,
Oh.
He was a funny guy, man. And I wish I might still do that. Write that book about the plane.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a complete story just with the Goonie Bird alone.
Legendary talk show host Mike Douglas once had you in the Fifth Dimension, I guess, for about a week on the show. And he was the one that, I guess, coined the phrase, I'm paraphrasing here. He called you, he said, did anybody ever tell you look like the bronze Clark Gable? And I guess that stuck, because after that, you know, I can see some resemblance again, and depending on how the shot is taken. Yeah, that's high praise from Mr. Douglas.
You ain't lying. I was cracking up. He was saying that, and then one day, just looking in the mirror, I don't know the angle and all. Since they said that, I did kind of resemble him a little bit. I wish I had his money. But,
exactly. Now, tell me a couple of TV icons again. Whenever we have folks that are veterans of the entertainment business, and it just, you know, was a kick for me because as a boy growing up during those times. Tell me a little bit about a couple of TV icons for the viewers and myself. Start with Ed Sullivan. Interesting character?
Oh, man, he loved the group, right? And he was very interesting. In fact, he was kind of ill. They were giving him medicine, I found out later. One time before we even finished the song, he was like, "That's the Fifth Dimension." Hey, wait a minute, baby, we ain't finished yet.
Oh, gee.
They came out to give us, but we did the show a couple of times, and it was great.
I heard it, and I don't remember seeing this, and I haven't found it online, but that he did a show, I guess it was towards the end of the Ed Sullivan series, that he did an entire show as a tribute to you folks and your music.
Yeah, that was really nice, man. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And then I figured we had finally made it.
Oh,
just
absolutely.
Before that, when I really found out that we had made it, Frank Sinatra came and asked me for an autograph for his kids. I couldn't believe that. Yes, sir.
And speaking of
the only group that he ever took on the road, you know, and we worked London, Holland, Spain, for the Queen, everything, and two of his retirement parties. But he loved the group.
Speaking of the chairman of the board there, one of his daughters, Nancy Sinatra, had a nice comment on the back jacket of the book. Quote, "The Fifth Dimension had it all. Great voices, upbeat, engaging personalities, and oh, so easy on the eyes. That sound was theirs, and we knew who was singing in the first four bars," and unquote, Nancy Sinatra, Frank's daughter, paying tribute to the Fifth Dimension. The other thing, too, about you guys was that even as a young teen growing up in those days, it was remarkable, and I don't know why this was, but I knew every name of every member of the Fifth Dimension. Why do you think that that was so evident with you folks? Because that doesn't always happen with a lot of band members.
And do you know what, man? To this day, you mentioned a lot of famous groups, but you can't mention all. You won't. Only other group that I knew of was the Beatles. That you knew everybody's name.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Even, Mick Jagger and his guitar player were the only two names that I can remember.
Exactly. Again, no offense to the other ones, because they did change through the various circumstances. But yeah, it really is remarkable for a group such as yours that you guys stood out the way you did. It's amazing. Champagne Soul, as we said earlier. LaMonte McLemore joining us here for the remaining hour on Studio 411. The book From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension, co-authored with Robert-Allan Arno. Another gentleman, too, that is sadly missed, and I wanted to get some thoughts or stories, if you have any, on him. Mr. Flip Wilson, who, again, back in the 60s and 70s especially, was really a major TV force, both comedic and variety show in those days. What do you remember about Flip?
Oh, man, Flip was one of the funniest people, and I was fortunate enough to meet Red Fox. And in fact, when I wrote my joke book, I wrote a couple of jokes from Red Fox and Richard Pryor, and also I got to know all these funny people. So I guess that's why I started writing notes and I finally put my joke book together, and it's out right now too. But they were my inspirations, and Red Fox, man, it's in the book too. But he's from St. Louis. And we stayed in touch for a long, long time, man, when he moved to L.A., and then when he moved to Vegas. He said, man, I have a TV show coming out, sampling, son, and I'd like for you to try it for a part for my son, because he and I were always joking together and all. And sure enough, I look more like his son than Damon Wilson.
Damon Wilson, yeah. So you were just too busy to take that on, or what happened there?
Right, but he said, I said, well, how come you name his son Lamont? Well, you named his son on sampling son after me.
Oh, I see. There you go. There you go. Well, see, look at that, boy. I bet you Damon Wilson is thanking his lucky stars, because that was quite a gig on that show. You know.
Oh yeah, he did great too.
Still in reruns.
Red Fox, man, he always looked out for his friends and family, and he got all of his friends from St. Louis, man, on his TV show, and none of them had no acting experience really, but they did great on it and gave them all the chance.
Now, talk about your dear departed member, Ron Townsend, there, as you guys called him, Sweets. Tell us a little bit about Ron. Now, when did he pass?
He passed when I first moved here about 15, 16 years ago.
So around
here in Las Vegas. Right?
Oh, I got you. And
we went to school together, you know, from when he graduated a little before me. He was a little older.
Yeah, because I read in the book, I didn't realize you and Billy and Ron all came either from St. Louis or from the suburbs of St. Louis. That's amazing.
Yeah. All of us from St. Louis. And Dick Gregory was another comedian. He went to school with me and Ron. So I got a lot of jokes from him, too. I mentioned him in my book also. And he is a fabulous entertainer, and he's still doing it too.
Oh yeah, real quick, if I'm almost thinking we should hold this off maybe till the next time, but if we can talk a little bit about it. There's a program / seminar, and again, I'm not familiar with it, but just in a couple of seconds, if you can fill us in, that you started, I guess, following, called EST. Tell us a little bit about that and what it did for you.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't start ESP. I was just a part of it, man.
No, but I'm saying it. No, I know you didn't start it, but I'm saying that was something you embraced. Is that I'm not quite sure. Is that just a kind of a philosophy, or it kind of filled me in on what that is?
Yeah, well, everybody took it. It was a seminar.
Gotcha.
Oh, man, Alzheimer's, I hate it. I can't think of the guy's name that did it, but I mean, it altered my life too, man. Because all it did was, it was like Scientology, only better for me, because Scientology was telling everybody, well, we're it, and this is it, and nothing else is going to take its place and all. But ESP said, no, we just want to make you aware of what you are, you know, and nobody's better than you are, and you ain't no better than nobody else, and I love that. So I really use it to help guide my life. And one thing for sure, one thing that stands out the most is, he said, everybody coming in, about 150 people, he said, sign up now, because you can't go to the bathroom unless you have a medical problem. And man, all these people got up, signed up, said, yeah, I got this medical problem. And the guy looked at it and said, wait a minute, I had 150 people, and 125 of y'all got a medical problem. This seminar is about honesty, and you know, don't let pee ruin your life, man. You control going to the bathroom. Don't let the bathroom control you. So I remember that, and that helped a whole lot. Because sometimes we're on the bus, man, I wanted to go bad. I said, hey, I'm in control of this, so I'll wait.
There you go.
It helps to this day.
In 1976, towards the end there, you guys actually switched labels, an album called Earthbound that is considered kind of a classic in some genres there. You guys released, and then in 76, Billy Davis and his then bride, Marilyn McCoo, of course still married after all these years, went off on their own. You and Florence and Ron continued on. Again, you wound up even recording a couple of LPs in the late 70s with Motown.
Yep. And Marilyn and Billy had big hits too, man. And I just went to a show here in Vegas, man. They're all fabulous. So we're telling the audience, please go see them if they ever get a chance to. Because
so still doing well, and that's good to hear. That's between them and Florence.
And one thing about the Fifth Dimension, they're all still very close. And even when Marilyn and Billy left, it wasn't about no arguments or nothing. It's just 10 years, they say, hey, we want to try to do something else, and being in a group is confining, so we gave them their blessing. And they even helped us find two people, Margie Barnes and Danny Beard, in a play in New York. Merlin found them and Billy helped find them as replacements.
Now,
We're still very close.
December of 1990, some years later, of course, you and Florence and Ron, kept the Fifth Dimension going with, as you mentioned, some replacement Fifth Dimensionites, we'll call them. December 1990, the group reunited as the original Fifth Dimension, and that must have been a kick. And of course, then you guys wound up getting, while Ron was still with us, wound up getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That must have been quite an honor.
Yeah, it's quite a highlight in our life, man. So, yeah, we got together. And, it was great. And people wanted us to do it again, but when Ron died, I didn't want to do it again because it wasn't the real Fifth Dimension,
Sure.
Warby would do, but no, it wasn't the same for me without Ron.
Now, in the remaining moments we have here with Lamont McLemore, again, the book From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension. As we end the program, Lamont, we're going to play your latest single that you've put together. I guess you wrote it and co-produced it. The gentleman helping you on the vocal is a young man named Julio Hanson. It's called Ceasefire, and in about a minute, tell me the idea behind the song.
Well, I'm not really a songwriter, even though I've written 3 or 4 songs. One from Gladys Knight, and another song that Frank Sinatra wanted to do, but he died before he could do it. But we were talking about weapons of mass destruction, and they went over and didn't find any. And so I went to bed thinking about that, and I woke up in the middle of the night. My wife said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know. My hand just started writing." And he wrote this song called Ceasefire, and it says, there is a weapon of mass destruction, and it's easy to find. Just look in the mirror, because it's us, mankind. Boom, and the song starts. And man, now it's getting so many. I put pictures to it. I'm gonna try to get you a copy of this too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We're gonna play this track as we thank Lamont McLemore for joining us on Studio 411. The book, again, From Hobo Flats to the Fifth Dimension, A Life Fulfilled in Baseball, Photography, and Music. As we end the program, we're going to shift it over to hear the song Ceasefire. Mac, I look forward, hopefully, to having you back on the show to talk about some of the other people and places and things.
I got one thing quick to tell you about Ceasefire.
Absolutely.
It's getting ready to go viral, man, and people call me crying after the picture that I put with it. And now we're talking about, you had the Million Man's March, Million Women's March. This is the Billion People's Peace March all over the world. So we want everybody to help us get this together, and it's going to happen.
Very good, very good. Thanks so much. You hang in there with us a minute. Again, we'd like to thank Lamont McLemore for joining us this episode of Studio 411. It's been a real treat, and we look forward to getting him back on, and of course Florence, and who knows, maybe we'll reunite the whole band here in the studio. So again, we're going to listen to Ceasefire. Mac produced it, co-produced it, wrote the song, performed along with him doing the spoken part, and Julio Hanson doing the vocal. We thank you for joining us here on Studio 411, and we will see you next time. Take care.
There is a weapon of mass destruction, and it's easy to find. Just look in the mirror, because it's us, mankind.
Ceasefire, say it loud enough. Ceasefire, can't say it enough. Just 2 words, ceasefire, can mean so much. 2 words can bring wars to a halt. Who's to blame? We're all at fault. No one's born with a gun in hand. What happens when we become woman and man? Without greed and prejudice, we're born. It's the reason so many lives are torn. There's a fate for hate, it's not heaven's gate. That's the message, let's get it straight. Words can hurt as much as a wound, but God's word can lift spirits to the moon. Ceasefire, lay your weapons down, free all the hands that we bound. Let's try negotiations, oh, not eliminations. Wars bring death and destruction, with peace and freedom comes construction. Ooh, let's have welfare and not warfare. No, no, stop using religion as an excuse. Stop using it for all the abuse.
It's not complicated. What is it about peace that you don't understand? It's coming down to the wire. So before it's too late, ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire.